I want to go through my top five. Okay, so I got Dallas number one. I got San Francisco two, Philly three. I think they're almost an item. I think Philadelphia, although Philadelphia hasn't played as well as it did in the playoffs last year, they're still a highly impressive group, in my opinion. So I got Philadelphia three. I got Miami four. I love what I've seen in the Dolphins. And I have Kansas City five. My remaining top 10 is Baltimore six, Buffalo seven, the Rams eight, Seattle nine, and Detroit and Tampa tied for 10. But let's kind of zero in on the top five, Miles, and you tell me where you might have a disagreement. San Francisco 2, Philly 3, Miami 4, and Kansas City 5. Is that how you'd line them up, or where do you differ?
You know what? I probably would. I mean, I guess the thing is, for me, it's sort of like a reputation thing, and that's not necessarily fair all the time, but I expect Kansas City will be the number one or number two seed, number three seed at worst in the AFC in this year. And one of the reasons why is their defense is as good as it usually gets toward the end of the season, but we're at the beginning of the season. And you saw Chris Jones come back and play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, he was dominant. And that's not something you expect when a guy misses all of training camp. And, you're going into Jacksonville and you're playing in a stadium that's, heat index of 100 degrees on the field. Like that, to me, that's extremely impressive. But Kansas City's got things that they need to work out offensively, but I'm pretty sure, we've seen Andy Reid for long enough, and we've seen Patrick Mahomes for long enough that we can believe that those things are going to get worked out, whether or not, their receiving core is as good as it's been in the past or not. That's fine. But I also love what Miami has done. And I think going on the road, beating the Chargers at SoFi Stadium in week one, where you have to come back and do that and make sure you get the defensive stops at the end, that was a huge win. And then to go to New England, which is always a tough place to play. I mean, the New England Patriots aren't the Brady Patriots anymore. They've still got one of the best head coaches that we've ever seen in the National Football League, right? So that's a big win to do that. And to get both of those back-to-back start the season, and now you get to go home. I love what Mike McDaniel is doing. I love that he brought in Vic Fangio to be that defensive coordinator early on in the offseason, and I think those moves are paying off. But it's not necessarily great podcast fodder, but I do agree with the way that you've got these teams lined up right now. I think that they are the top five in football right now.
You know what I found interesting, as I was sitting there Sunday night and thinking, because basically some weeks it's obvious what are you going to lead the column with. And it was probably 10 o'clock Sunday night, 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I didn't have a lead to the column that I loved. And I said, okay, when in doubt, have a list. And so my list, I was thinking about various things. I almost did a list of the NFL MVP through 2 weeks, but I thought it'd be silly. It's funny. One of the guys on my list of the top 5 or 6, as crazy as it sounds, would have been Baker Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield
we'll just sort of next week.
Yeah, exactly. And in the future, but I mean, Baker Mayfield's been great for Tampa so far. Yeah, but I was thinking when I decided I was going to do this, and I said, okay, let's take a shot at it. So I sat there and noodled for a minute, and I said 1, Dallas, 2, San Francisco, 3, Philly, and I said, hey, wait a second. Didn't before the season we say that far and away the AFC is the best conference? And they've got a lot more depth. They've got much better teams. And I said, how in the world can my top 3 teams, after 2 weeks, has it changed that much, all be NFC teams? But, it's like Bill Parcells always used to say, all I can do is go by what I see. And what I've seen so far, to me, San Francisco and Philadelphia, if you want to have Philly second, San Francisco third, that's fine with me. But those are the next 2 best teams. I'll just say one thing about each team. San Francisco interests me so much because do you remember, almost a year ago when they traded for Christian McCaffrey? And I think everybody thought, well, geez, good trade. They traded a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5 for Christian McCaffrey. That was a lot, especially for a guy who'd been hurt a lot. Yeah. And what's been so interesting is I think now he's played like, is it 24 straight games or something like that? He's played a lot of consecutive games now without being hurt. And as long as he stays upright, I'll tell you, I think the 49ers have the best weaponry, and that is without having right now a healthy tight end because I just don't think George Kittle's healthy. I don't know if he's going to be totally healthy this year. So I love the offensive weapons they have. And then when I look at Philadelphia, I say, you're allowed to struggle a little bit on offense when you have a defensive front that is as powerful and as young and as foreboding as the Eagles have. So I think Jalen Carter obviously has been terrific early, and I think both of those teams have the potential to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. But that's the weird thing. The power conference now, you have to say, because of how much you question Buffalo, how much you probably question Jacksonville, and we probably won't question Kansas City forever, but we're kind of questioning them now. But I just now look at the NFC as, at least in the middle to late September, as the power conference.
It's interesting because, we thought that the three teams that we're talking about, though, at the top of the NFC, that they would be in some form or fashion the 1, the 2, and the 5 seed, right? Whether it's San Francisco on top, the Cowboys on top, or the Eagles on top. And then, of course, because the Eagles and Dallas are in the same division, one of them would then be the 5 seed. I think that that's still going to be the case as we sit here, in September, and it's September 18th as we're recording this. So I don't think that that's going to change throughout the course of the season. But what I don't know if I'm surprised by this or if it's just one of those observations that kind of makes sense in some way. When you look at the Eagles and the fact that their passing offense just has not been what it was, last year, there's something to the fact that they do have 2 new coordinators, right? Sean Desai is doing a great job so far with that defense.
Yeah.
And I thought that the continuity of having Brian Johnson go from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator would mean that things would be pretty smooth in terms of the transition offensively. And with the run game, obviously it is, right? They are dominant in the run game, that offensive line. I love that drive that they had against the Vikings, where it was basically all runs. That's an offensive lineman's absolute dream, where you're just lining them up and say, okay, we're going to knock the hell out of you off the ball, and we're just going to go down, and you're not going to be able to stop us. That's fun to watch. So I think that, their passing game's not where they want it to be yet, but I think that it will be. And when you have a new coordinator, sometimes you just have to get into that rhythm and that timing of the way things should be lined up against everybody. And then, when your opponent and all this different stuff, I think the Eagles are going to be fine. Whether they end up being the 1, 2, 5 seed, I don't know yet, but they will be one of those.
Myles, as you speak about that, what is very interesting? I just thought about this. Let's just say that the Cowboys and the Eagles each finish 13-4. I don't know, whatever. Let's say they're 2 of the real power teams in football, and so one of them has got to be the 5 seed. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what the line is going to be on the wild card game with, let's say, Dallas as the 5 seed at Atlanta? What's the line going to be? 13?
It's not going to be good.
It'll be outrageous. It'll be outrageous. Atlanta or Tampa or whoever it is. It's amazing to see if, obviously, one of those 2 teams, Philadelphia or Dallas, is going to have to go on the road and will be, I would think, a borderline double-digit favorite. Who knows? I mean, it's a long season. But if it were to happen now, we would say it'd definitely be a double-digit favorite. Myles, let's just finish it off by, right now, Miami, I've been so impressed with Miami, even though, look, a lot of people might look at the New England game and say, oh, a little close for comfort. And to which I would respond, the Miami Dolphins have 3 very difficult road games on their schedule. A coast-to-coaster at the Chargers opening weekend. You come back, you get back at 5 in the morning Monday Eastern time, maybe 6 in the morning Eastern time. You're a wet dish rag for a couple days, and then, you got to get ready to face the great and powerful Oz on the road in Foxborough. So they started the season 2-0 against, and the other tough road game, I would say, obviously, is at Buffalo. And look, they do play Kansas City, but Kansas City is in Frankfurt. I don't know what a neutral field means in that game, but I think both teams have a road issue for that game because they're both traveling 8 hours to get there. But be all that as it may, the one really interesting thing that I think about the Dolphins right now, and when I watch them, I just say, I love watching this team play. You know why? I love watching a coach and quarterback who are in harmonic convergence. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think when I see Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa. And does Tua throw one of the prettiest, most catchable touch passes? Oh, my gosh. He throws a beautiful football. It's like he's throwing a 6-month baby spiral. He's so careful with it. Oh, don't hurt the baby. Be careful with the baby. And the receiver catches it so gently and beautifully. And I just really love watching. If you give me my choice right now for one team, I just really like watching the Miami Dolphins play football.
Okay, you're gonna take the Miami Dolphins, and I would get the OG, I guess, of the derivative of the offense, which would be Kyle Shanahan, because I think that that he calls plays with Brock Purdy in pretty much harmony. One of the things that Purdy was talking about after yesterday's game was that the fact that he needs to stop overthrowing deep balls, because Purdy could have had 2, maybe 3 touchdowns if he just hits dudes in stride, which he acknowledged. So, but I think you're onto something with Tua Tagovailoa. The touch that he has exhibited on the pass that you pointed out in your column to Carecraft at toward the end of the first half, that one was amazing. And it reminded me a little bit of the throw that he had to Tyreek Hill in the go-ahead score in the fourth quarter last week against Los Angeles, where it was one of those throws where I'm like, how in the world did he fit that into that tight window in such a way that Tyreek Hill could catch it in the way that it was one of those outstanding throws. He had another one down the left sideline to Jalen Waddle that Waddle went up and caught, which was an outstanding catch, but it was an outstanding ball too. And it was one of those where you could say, he was just going at him in stride. So Tua's playing very well right now. There are still some things that I would like to see him clean up. The one interception, that one wasn't very good. And then also when you fumble the snap, and he fumbled 2 snaps against the Chargers too. It was on the first drive, and they were able to clean that up. But you don't want to fumble the snap when you're in 3rd down and you have a chance to close that game out right there. You get a first down in the 4th quarter in a 4-minute situation, you're basically trying to not give the ball back, and you can't fumble there. So those are little things, right? But little things sometimes can snowball into big things. But overall, you gotta have good feelings about the way Tua Tagovailoa has started the 2023 season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun, so much fun to watch. And look, I'm going to get to Rich Eisen now, but the last point I guess I would make, it's so strange to think of Kansas City as number 5 right now, but they kind of played like number 5. Not.
I would say they might have played like number 2 on offense.
Oh, that's a good one. Very good. but I do think this. there are many times in football where you have a knee-jerk reaction that this guy is such a good coach or this quarterback is such a good quarterback. They'll figure out the personnel losses. They'll be fine. They'll be good. Well, my theory on Kansas City right now is that Patrick Mahomes had a great number one in Tyreek Hill. I don't think he was really that emotional about losing him because Tyreek Hill is kind of like Stephon Diggs in that they can be a little bit gimme, gimme, gimme. And I think most quarterbacks say, I'll gimme, gimme, gimme to the guy who's most open. But so not only do you lose him, but then you lose the guy who, even though he didn't replace Tyreek Hill, he knew that there was a guy who he could always count on to be exactly where he should be, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. He lost him. So after a year which you lose a home run maker all the time in Tyreek Hill, you then lose a guy who's a different kind of receiver, but a guy who you rely on nonetheless in Juju Smith-Schuster. You lose another speed guy in McCole Hardman. So what you're trying to do is say, okay, I've got Sky Moore. He was a disappointment last year, but I'm going to bring him to every offseason workout. He's going to be Velcroed to me throughout this offseason, and that's great. But still, it's going to take some time. And look, I was happy to see that for Sky Moore's sake, I was happy to see that he scored his first regular season touchdown as a professional in Jacksonville on Sunday. So, the process is speeding up for him and all that. But I still think that if people would say, well, geez, Kansas City has been outscored so far by Washington, by Indianapolis, by Arizona. Yeah, that's true. And that's because it's going to take some time for Patrick Mahomes to find his feet with these with his new group of receivers. But anyway, gone on for a while about that.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.